Okay, so here we are, the first thing, guys. These are going to be your homework videos. The whole idea behind this is to get the vocabulary down, and you'll have this down more or less. I like to try to go kind of humorous here with some memes, but also get the stuff to you. That way, they're in class, we can do more objectives and fun things. So, objective one deals with westward expansion, okay? And you can see Native Americans exist in the American government, free real estate. Um, our main goal here we got was to expand, all right? So, objective one, 1.1 deals with manifest destiny. Now, over here on the right, this guy's name's Mr. Betts. He does parody videos. Some of them are kind of funny. He does have a Manifest Destiny done to the tune of Iggy Azalea's "Fancy." So, if you like music and you kind of like that stuff, you can go check that out. If not, it's not a big deal. Okay. So, first off, Manifest Destiny. The term was first used by a newspaper. The whole idea is the country would expand from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and many believed when we bring in the word destiny that it is a divine mission from God to do this. This famous painting here is called Spirit of the West. We have the spirit here, and in her hand she has a book, probably more than likely Bible, something like that, taking it to the natives. She also is carrying with her the telephone wires, which you can see here on the left hand, the buffalo running away, being pursued more or less by the farmers and the ranchers going west, and behind her, she's bringing all these new things: the covered wagons, the Pony Express, the stagecoaches, the locomotives, trains, etc. And so this was the idea: move west and eventually do it. Now the main question is, what do you do once you get as far as west possible as California per se? The next thing is the Homestead Act. Homestead Act came out in 1862, so this is during the Civil War. It offered 150 acres. If you think about that for a minute, most homes now don't even have an acre. But it offered 150 acres for a free, or it might have been a small fee of $5, which back then was a lot. Most land were bought by businesses, in particular railroads. Now, the people who lived in them, they didn't have anything. This is the Great Plains, the Great American Desert is called. So they built these houses called soddies, like you have the picture there, and they used sod and mud to make their house. It's that simple. There's a very famous picture of a goat actually trimming the house. It's kind of funny there. But you can think about all the bugs, and some of y'all are just real bug. Just imagine, the bugs in that thing. All right, the next thing, we have the Treaty of Fort Laramie. Okay, Fort Laramie is going to be on this little video, on this little picture here. It is, I'm trying to find it where you're here. It is where you can see the little Sioux Nation thing lit up down to the kind of south and west of it there, Fort Laramie. Anyway, the conflict arose between settlers and Native Americans. Native Americans were there, we covered that. Settlers, Manifest Destiny. And so there was many battles that ensued. The Sioux Indians, they signed a treaty with the U.S. government called the Treaty of Fort Laramie. They're going to live on a reservation, and the settlers would stop using their sacred Bozeman Trail, which was a sacred hunting ground, etc. Problem is, settlers continued to use the trail because of gold, thereby breaking the treaty. Now, famously, one very big Indian chief named Sitting Bull never signed the treaty, and so we're setting ourselves up for bigger battles coming up, okay? Now, George Custer, here he is, Custer's last stand. After the settlers were attacked by the Sioux Indians for breaking the treaty, the U.S. government sends George Custer to deal with the Sioux. And so he goes, he's kind of a Civil War hero at this point. He thinks everything's fine. He's ambushed, and his entire unit is wiped out at the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is nicknamed Custer's Last Stand. And so the moral of this story, you've heard this maybe brought up, and what's the big deal of Custer's Last Stand? You never underestimate your opponent. Anyone can always beat you in whatever game if you think they're too weak or whatever it might be. So, learn from Custer. All right, the next one we have is Wounded Knee. The Native Americans are rounded up. They're sent to reservations. Sioux Big Chief Sitting Bull, the one who never signed a treaty, is sent to Wounded Knee, Wyoming. A riot begins. All the Indians, including Sitting Bull, are massacred. When this ends, the Indians will give up fighting against the settlers and say, fine, we're going to be with us. Ends the Indian Wars, and famously there's a chief, Chief Joseph, who took his tribe to Canada. He said, I will fight no more forever. I will flow as the rivers do. Just let my people go in peace. At this point, he realizes he's fighting a losing battle. He can't keep up technologically, and so they're going to move to the reservations. All right. We also have the gold rush. Now, settlers went west for many reasons. The biggest was to get rich. California was home to the gold rush 1849, hence the San Francisco 49ers with the gold color scheme. That's why they are 49 for 1849ers, and that's why there is gold in there for the gold rush, in case you didn't know that. Now, the Comstock lode was a very famous, they call these minerals, where you're mining things was another big thing. They call them veins, much like a vein carries your blood throughout your body. The veins contain these minerals. Now, the most famous vein or lode was the Comstock lode in nearby what we call present day Las Vegas or Reno. It's mined for other materials, mostly silver. It is the richest mineral vein of silver in modern Nevada. And you think that that's kind of crazy how that works, thinking that Las Vegas has always been a place where you're finding money. But nonetheless, there it is. Now, the next little occupation we have coming up is that of being a rancher or a cowboy. Okay, and we have the Chisholm Trail. Now, ranchers use the open range. The whole idea of this is that anybody can go where they want to have as many and herd as many cattle as possible. They're going to use a process called the long drive, and this is going to be where you're going to take it down from the bottom part of Texas here up into Kansas and Indian Territory to push the herds to processing center and the slaughterhouses in Chicago. Now, the most famous was called the Chisholm Trail. This is it. You would get them up into Dodge City, Abilene, Kansas, where they would be slaughtered, put on a train, sent to Chicago, processed there, and then sent out for distribution. And this is a great idea. The next thing we have is the Transcontinental Railroad. Now, once we start building railroads, this kind of impedes the settlers, and that's a discussion for something later on. But the railroads connect the east and the west. It connected the open range with the processing centers. It connected the processing centers with consumers in the industrial east. The Transcontinental Railroad met at Promontory Point, Utah. This is a picture here. They have something called the Golden Spike. There's a museum. You can go see the Golden Spike. It's not really awe-inspiring. It's not huge or anything. It's still kind of cool that it's been there since this long, but nonetheless. All right, objective 1.2, the farmers. Now, right here you can see the cows tell the farmers, tell them what we've done. It just kind of made me laugh at that point. So we have the farmers there. We know the farmers are going to get into a little bit of a scrap, a little bit of a have beef with the railroads, and it's all about making money. It's no different than today. But at this point, in our day, whoever controls the internet makes the money, okay? And that's how that works. Back in this day, whoever controlled the land made money. So do the farmers control the land to make crops, or do the railroads control the land to build the railroads? And this is where we're at now. Now, the farmers are going to fight back, okay? So we have a man named Oliver Kelly. Oliver Kelly is a farmer, and he promotes something called the Husbands of Patronage, and this is his thing here. And it has all these different things, and going around, in all of these, maybe too small to see, but all the descriptions and jobs around the outside, for the most part, are negative, except for the one in the middle. The farmer says, I feed you all. Now, they call themselves the Grange. This came from the Latin word for farm. The whole idea behind this movement was to promote the farmer ideals to the government, in particular, how much they hate the railroad and anybody who's not taking them for face value. Now, these granges are going to group together. They're going to have these farming cooperatives or co-ops. Groups that control prices try to encourage people to buy local, much like today. Some states passed Granger laws, and Illinois and Kansas. Granger laws later on are going to be ruled unconstitutional because the railroads ruled. The whole idea behind farming cooperatives, like we have here, is sustainability. And that just means, what can you do yourself? Now, once they saw the government had turned against them, they're going to start their own political party. It was called the People's Party. More commonly, it was called the Populist Party. It was formed by farmers and other like-minded individuals. Big two people we have, Mary Lease. Mary Lease was known as Tornado. She famously said, stop raising corn and start raising hell. And then you got James, as they call him, Dream Weaver, because he had a lot of very dreams. They're concerned about the state of financial crisis for farmers. The farmers cannot afford the crops they're producing, they're closing, etc. Famously, the movie Wizard of Oz, not the movie before it was a movie, the book, is an allegory or a story about the populace. And we'll cover that in class, and you'll understand who the Tin Men is, and et cetera, et cetera. Very cool. But suffice to say, like this, Oz is for an ounce of gold or money. But it's a real cool story coming up. Now, speaking of that, the gold standard in our country, we are currently on the gold standard. Our money has to be backed by something. We always had used the gold standard. We went off it once. For example, a dollar bill is equal to a certain percentage of gold. I'll find out. I can tell you in class. Gold is scarce, so money was scarce. Supporters of the gold standard are called gold bugs. Now, to counter this, the farmer said we need more money in order to make these things better for us. So they're going to introduce the free silver movement. Silverites, they were called, wanted a silver added to gold to make a, quote, by or to metallic monetary basis. This would increase the flow of money. Now, we have two things that are going to do this. The Sherman Silver Purchase Act allowed them to do this. It's part of what we call the economic deal with the devil. That simply means you make the deal with the devil, you get what you want, but there's an unintended consequence. Now, we never fully went to a free silver idea. Reason being, if you increase the production of something and how many people have it, it reduces the value. You want something rare so that it's there. I mean, if you're going to go get a pair of sneakers that you see, whatever, you want the rare pair of sneakers because they're going to be worth more in the end. You don't want the pair of sneakers everyone else has because it's not going to be worth any money, or shirts, or whatever it might be. Purses. So that's the idea behind this. Now, all of this comes to a head. We have a big debate. In 1896, there's a presidential election, and a Democratic candidate by the name of William Jennings Bryan, famous American, pops up multiple times, is going to give a speech at the Democratic National Convention. And he famously said, "You're not going to crucify mankind upon a cross of gold," you see in the picture, or lay upon labor the crown of thorns, making an allegory there to the crucifixion of Jesus. Now, the popular slogan is taken up by one of the main two political parties of Democrats and Republicans. This kills populism, a third party, and it kind of dissipates. Now, populism did have a lot of steam going behind it. They got electoral votes. They had votes for president. I mean, this is working really, really in their favor. Now, objective 1.3. We only got 4 here. And this is the forced treatment of Native Americans. We call this assimilation. Assimilation means where you're going to essentially drop your beliefs and become like someone else. And you can see the freaky cat there, right? Assimilation, 10% complete. And, you know, I don't want to be near that cat. That cat freaks me out. Anyway. Now, in 1887, the United States government is going to pass something called the Dawes Act, full name Dawes Severalty Act. This is going to force Indians off reservations because those reservations are now needed to give the land to people who are going to use it for good. What it did is it gave parcels or areas of land to each male, and it encouraged them to sell the land, which is against the Indians' nature. So they did this. Now, what did they do with the children? They're going to make something called the Carlisle School. Now, you think there's a lot of kids in our school. Look at this. Those schools are in the back, and all these kids went in there. Indian schools sent off to boarding school, and they're basically taken from their family. Their hair was cut. They changed their last name. They forbid them speaking in their native language, and they said they spoke English. The unofficial motto was to kill the Indian, save the man. Now, not killing in a physical sense, but killing the traditions, the cultures, and saving the man. That's the best way I can explain assimilation to you. All right, so here's one little boy who went to the school. His name was Tom Trolino. This is the same boy. So Tom Trolino is on the left when he was roaming and had been doing things he did before. On the right, after the year of the Carlisle School. So assimilation, when someone drops their culture in favor of another. The Dawes Act is essentially forced assimilation. The Carlisle School is a form of Americanization. Americanization simply means dropping everything and becoming like Americans. Doing the things that Americans would do, not what natives had done. Now, last section here. Section 4, new regulations because of the populace. Populists are huge. And a really cool thing about this, they call them a patchwork party. You can see all the different parties that were in populist. You have Grangers, you have Greenbacks, which is money. You have socialists, you have free silvers, you have prohibition, not wanting alcohol. There's so many things going on here, and the populists kind of brought them together. Now, what are the new things that happened because of them? Now, in 1892, when they were organized, they did something called the Omaha Platform. Now, platform is what you stand for. The really, really interesting thing about this is a lot of these actually came true. So, looking at this, number 2 is going to happen later on. We do not have a national bank anymore. We have an idea of the Federal Reserve, and we'll explain that. Number 3 is an amendment to our Constitution, the 17th. Government ownership of railroads will not happen because that is socialism. We don't like that. Postal savings banks, that will happen. Restriction of undesirable immigration, big topic then, big topic now. Still working there. 8-hour workday for government employees, that does happen. The Pinkertons, they're big, and we'll talk about them in class. The Australian secret ballot does happen. This means you're able to vote whoever you want without any form of intimidation, whatnot. Remonetization of silver. And then the last one is an interesting one, a single term for president or vice president. Not 2 terms, but 1. And so we'll discuss as we go through. But they're kind of ahead of their time. There are a lot of ideas here that are going to happen. And it's all kind of brought up by these farmers down the way. And that's kind of cool how that works. Now, one of the bigger things they're going to do is, since they said, well, fine, if you're not going to let us do this, let's regulate commerce. Okay, we have something called the Interstate Commerce Act, 1887. This was after they ruled a Granger law in Illinois to be unconstitutional. They set up a commission to regulate trade between the states. It is still in effect today. However, not in charge so much about railroads, more about semi-trucks. And they're all over the interstates. They're those weighing stations you see on the side of the road where the semis will pull over and they weigh them, etc. All right, well, that's it there. Hope you enjoy that one. But we'll get into more things in class. So you have a couple days to kind of get through this and get this all done. All right?